In this video, we are going to be talking about standards-based grading and what are the advantages and some disadvantages of using standards-based grading. So the focus with standards-based grading is not on the assignment, it's on the standard. And so normally we give a worksheet, we grade the worksheet, they get a score on the worksheet. Now you're going to say this worksheet demonstrates knowledge on this standard. And so instead of giving you a score for the worksheet, I'm going to give you a score for this standard, this concept, this idea that I want you to know. And so while that worksheet may meet that particular standard, there may be other ways to determine that as well. And there may be multiple worksheets or tests or quizzes or projects or something like that that would meet the same standard. But the focus is on having students think about what they need to learn, not what they need to do. So that's the kind of most important part. That classic question you get, what can I do to raise my grade? Well, now the answer is, instead of, well, go look for your missing assignments and da-da-da-da, it's like, well, go look for the concepts you don't understand yet. You're not passing yet on, and figure out how you're going to show that to me and learn what those are. So learn instead of do is kind of the focus here. And then what students need to learn. And I know one of the issues that I had was I might have a test that would have 6 or 7 concepts on it at one time. Big test, took a long time to grade, took a long time for students to do. And in the end, they would get some score, but I wouldn't know necessarily which of the concepts, but just by looking at my grade book, I wouldn't know which concepts they knew and understood and which ones they didn't. So when you go by standards, you can break up that same big test into multiple parts. Here is standard 1, here is standard 2, here is standard 3, and then they get 3 different scores based on how they did for those 3 different standards. In the grade book, it goes in as they understand standard 1, they do not understand standard 2, they're almost at standard 3, but not quite yet. So the idea there. What does it look like? Well, in the grade book, or how do you do it? In the grade book, there are some, I will say before we talk about this grade book, there are some grade books that have standards-based grading built into them. If they do, well, that's great, and it can be helpful, but it's very dependent on that system, and so I'm not going to go into every system. That's going to take way too long on a video. But let me know if you have questions about it, and we'll dig in on your particular system. But one of the simplest ways to do it is to just have in your grade book all the standards you want students to understand. So for me in science, here are 4 of the scientific practices that my students need to demonstrate proficiency on by the end of the year. Developing and using models, arguing from evidence, analyzing, interpreting data, right? And so student 1 here, I can see that student 1 is meeting expectation. A 3 out of 4 for me on mine, as that's meeting standard. But for the arguing from evidence, they're not getting that one, right? They're still struggling with it. They need to figure out how, they're getting close, but they're not quite there yet. And they are just killing it with analyzing and interpreting data. They know it. They totally have it set. And so each student can just look through. A 0 in this case might be that they did not take that assessment. And so it just shows as they have no evidence in there. You can also, sometimes grade books allow you to put in no basis or no evidence or missing or something like that. But otherwise, you can just put a 0 in there for that. So again, these are not assignments. That's not an assignment. That is a particular standard I want them to meet. They will do assignments to show me their mastery of that particular standard. And so the assignment itself isn't the important part. It's the demonstration of the mastery of that particular concept. And what I like about it is that it helps students to focus on that. And when that whole retaking of tests and things like that, if you have another test that's coming up or another assessment that's coming up that helps to show the student's ability to develop and use models, well, you can just replace it with that, right? You don't have to have them retake the first one. They can just show they mastered on the next one, and then you're done. You don't have to regrade anything. All right, so that is that. And let's put that away. And I want to show you a real grade book. So this is from a teacher friend of mine who uses standards-based grading, and I'll just move over here. And I want you to notice a couple things. They do look at individual assignments, and that is totally fine if you do, but notice that those individual assignments are out of 0, right? And so while there may be a score in here, there may be a check mark, but they don't actually count towards the grade. So the individual assignments, this is for practice, this is for learning, this is not about you getting a grade for it. But then you do have some assessments, like this making models one, where they are being assessed on their modeling skills. And so here are the scores, and she does it out of 5. But here are the scores for all her students and their modeling. And there are a couple students who either didn't do it or they're struggling with it. And that's, now who needs to work on their modeling for sure. And then this one over on the side here, and it got a little cut off. I just asked her to make a screenshot for me. This is a proficiency check. So this is on this particular concept, which I don't know what it is because it got cut off, but like an end of lesson or end of or some sort of checkpoint within the middle of the unit. Like by this point, you should know how this works, how this particular thing works. And then each of the scores get the grade. And in this particular grade book, this is Canvas. This indicates that they need to score. The student submitted something, but they haven't scored it yet. So again, this one's out of 8 for whatever reason, and this is how they determine their scores. So again, you can have it show up as by assignment. That is fine. You can do that. It's just that when she writes her assessments are only one standard at a time, and the assessment is titled that. So how can we smell things from a distance or whatever it might be? And so that's how your grade is based. So let's look at pushbacks. When you are, students and parents will be confused. Absolutely. Yeah. It's hard for students and parents to understand because they have been in a system for so long that is one way. And so if you're doing this by yourself, it's going to be a little confusing at first. I will tell you, they get used to it. And, it takes a month or 2. And maybe parents take the longest to figure out, but it does work out. Sounds like a big mental shift for me to make as a teacher. Absolutely. This was huge for me to make this shift myself. I really struggled with it and moving away from the assignments and towards the concepts that I wanted them to learn. It took me some time. Absolutely. It did. And it sounds like a lot of work, and it can be. Yeah. Depending on how well you know your standards, depending on how well you know your curriculum, your content, it can be a lot of work to prioritize, but to kind of think in terms of that as opposed to activities and lessons and tests and quizzes. So it can be, but there's people like me here to help you. So please reach out if you got questions, you got thoughts, you got ideas, or if you need some help, and I will see you in the next video.